Fresh set photos from the Atlanta set of Man of Tomorrow just gave us our clearest look yet at one of the most charged sequences in the film, and it's already generating some genuinely interesting theories about where the story is headed. David Corenswet's Superman and Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor are going at it, and what these photos show is that this fight does not go cleanly in Clark's favor. Lex hits back. The suit takes serious damage, visibly torn up across the chest, the cape, the whole silhouette, from what looks like a powerful blast from the warsuit. Clark himself is fine, obviously, because non-kryptonite weaponry isn't putting Superman down, but the fact that the suit absorbs that much punishment tells you Lex has built something that can actually compete on a physical level, which is a big deal for how this character is being handled in the DCU. There's also a small but easily misread detail worth addressing. James Gunn recently shared an image of Superman approaching the Fortress of Solitude, but the hashtag he used made it clear it was a callback to the first film, not new Man of Tomorrow footage. Easy to confuse things when production is active and stuff is circulating constantly. Back to the suit damage. Looking at these set photos carefully, Corenswet's suit is almost identical to what he wore in Superman. There's a minor adjustment around the collar, but it's otherwise the same design. That actually opens up a natural story beat. If Clark's suit takes this kind of beating from Lex's warsuit, you have a clean in-universe reason for a visual upgrade somewhere in the second or third act. Whether Gunn goes that route remains to be seen, but the damage we're seeing is serious enough that it can't just be ignored narratively. The theory gaining the most traction right now is that Brainiac may be actively controlling Superman's mind during this confrontation. Earlier footage from the same shoot showed Clark looking genuinely furious while going after Luthor. Not the calculated, reluctant ally energy you'd expect from someone who's supposed to be working alongside this person. If Brainiac has already mentally compromised Clark before the fight even starts, then what we're watching isn't Superman attacking Lex out of frustration or betrayal. It's Brainiac using the most powerful person on Earth as a weapon against the one ally who might actually help stop him. That's a deeply unsettling concept, and it's exactly the kind of psychological angle that elevates a good villain into a great one. Brainiac has played with telepathy and mind control across decades of comics, so this isn't a stretch. It's one of the more faithful directions Gunn could take. Let's get into Lars Eidinger, because the story of how he landed this role is genuinely one of the better casting anecdotes to come out of a DC production in a long time. Eidinger is a German actor with a substantial career in European prestige TV and serious stage work, but Hollywood had largely passed him by. He was 50 when the call came in, and by his own account, he'd made peace with the idea that a major studio movie just wasn't going to happen at this point in his career. Then a Zoom with James Gunn appeared out of nowhere. He recorded his audition tape 15 times in his living room before he felt it was right. He flew to Atlanta, watching the first Superman film on the plane to get into the right headspace, and walked into one of the stranger auditions imaginable. They put him in full Brainiac makeup, 2 hours in the chair, then walked him under an umbrella across what he described as a completely deserted studio lot. No crew, nobody around who might photograph what the character looks like. He performed inside a gaffer-taped square in the middle of a massive room, with Gunn watching and telling him he wanted to build the role together rather than hand over a fixed interpretation. Eidinger described the adrenaline as intense, but said the creative conversation with Gunn was real. Since booking the part, he's been training 4 times a week, and that's deliberate. Earlier reports indicated DC was specifically looking for someone with genuine physical presence, not just a cold, cerebral type actor. This version of Brainiac needs to be physically imposing in addition to being terrifying on an intellectual level, which tracks with the comics. The most iconic iterations of Brainiac aren't just a brain in a jar. He's a techno-organic organism who has overpowered Superman in direct physical confrontations. That combination is clearly what Gunn is building toward. The design is already fully realized, and they're going to significant lengths to protect it. Clearing an entire studio lot and walking an actor under an umbrella just for an audition is not standard protocol. When we finally see what Brainiac looks like in this film, it's going to be a moment. As further confirmation that things are moving, a recording of a stand-in delivering some of Brainiac's lines recently circulated online. No specifics about the content have been confirmed, but the existence of that recording tells you dialogue is locked and production is deep into the actual shoot. For the character's look and feel, Gunn has pointed to a wide range of source material. The original Otto Binder sci-fi stories from the late 50s, the darker Marv Wolfman interpretations that gave Brainiac a more menacing edge in later decades, the animated series version that shaped how an entire generation thinks about the character, and the recent Absolute Brainiac run in comics. That's a serious spread of tones, and it suggests the film isn't going to collapse him into a simple archetype. The animated version alone is one of the most chilling portrayals of any Superman villain ever put to screen. If Gunn brings that kind of cold, methodical intelligence to a live-action film with real budget and a committed actor in full practical design, this has legitimate potential to be something genuinely unsettling. The core dynamic of the film is Clark and Lex being left with no choice but to work together. Gunn has talked about relating to both characters in specific ways, to Lex's obsessive ambition and drive, and to Superman's fundamental belief in people and his Midwestern moral clarity. He described them as two sides of the same coin, which tells you the script isn't treating this as a temporary arrangement where everyone behaves nicely for 2 hours. These two hate each other, and every scene between them carries the weight of knowing both are waiting for the moment they don't need the other anymore. Gunn has also mentioned drawing inspiration from Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones when thinking about complex character dynamics and large-scale conflict, and both of those stories are fundamentally about uneasy alliances under existential pressure. Man of Tomorrow sounds like it could play as a political thriller wrapped inside a cosmic-scale action film, which is exactly the kind of framing that separates elevated genre filmmaking from a standard sequel. A major structural template that's been discussed is the 1992 comic storyline Panic in the Sky, in which Superman organizes a coalition of heroes to fight back against Brainiac's attempted invasion of Earth. In that arc, Maxima is part of the team before ultimately betraying the group. That framework goes a long way toward explaining why so many different heroes are showing up in a film that's nominally centered on one character. And there are a lot of heroes showing up. Isabel Merced is back as Hawkgirl, Frank Grillo returns as Rick Flag, Skylar Gisondo is back as Jimmy Olsen, Sarah Sampaio returns as Eve, and Maria Gabriela de Faria is back as the Engineer. Nathan Fillion is returning as Guy Gardner. Aaron Pierre, who plays John Stewart in the upcoming Lanterns series, is crossing over directly into the film, and Lanterns doesn't even premiere until August, meaning audiences will be introduced to John Stewart in a prestige television context, and then see him show up in a major theatrical release within the same year. That's a level of cross-platform integration that even the MCU took years to execute properly. 2 Green Lanterns operating in the same movie, potentially 3 when you fold in the broader Lanterns cast, starts to look like the early architecture of a Justice League assembling without anyone officially using that term yet. Adria Arcona is joining the cast as Maxima, the warrior queen of Almerac, a character first introduced in 1990 and created by Roger Stern and George Perez. In the comics, Maxima arrives on Earth specifically searching for a mate she considers worthy of her power, decides Superman is the only one who qualifies, and proceeds to be alternately antagonist, ally, and complicated figure depending on the storyline. There was a wave of fan speculation, and even some ambiguity in how Gunn himself responded publicly, that Arcona might actually be playing Wonder Woman, but Deadline lists her clearly as Maxima in their casting coverage, and Gunn has confirmed that neither Batman nor Wonder Woman appear in this movie. Arcona's role in Man of Tomorrow is reportedly more contained here, with a larger presence planned for a third Superman. That's the right instinct. Gunn is planting seeds rather than overloading this entry. There is also one female character currently being cast whose identity DC Studios has kept completely under wraps. No confirmed reporting, no reliable fan theory with a clear consensus. That mystery is still open. Andre Royo has been announced in an undisclosed role, marking a reunion with Gunn that goes back to their collaboration on the superhero comedy Super. The fan theory with the most traction is Martian Manhunter, and it makes a lot of structural sense. A film built around a cosmic-scale alien threat, with an ensemble of heroes being assembled to face something none of them can handle individually. John Johns belongs in that story almost by definition, and casting Royo, who plays quiet depth and concealed pain as well as anyone working right now, is exactly the kind of under-the-radar choice that Gunn tends to make. If that theory is correct, a Martian Manhunter reveal could function the same way Nick Fury's appearance at the end of Iron Man did, the moment where you suddenly understand that the universe is significantly larger than the story you've been watching. Whether Eddie Gathegy's Mr. Terrific or Anthony Carrigan's Metamorpho return from the first film hasn't been confirmed either way, but given the ensemble scale being assembled here and Gunn's clear preference for building worlds that feel populated and continuous, it would be genuinely surprising if at least a few familiar faces didn't show up in some capacity. Millie Alcock hasn't been officially confirmed for Man of Tomorrow, but storyboards visible in the Superman special features seem to strongly imply that Supergirl factors into the story at some point. Narratively, it's almost a natural fit. Kara would likely be the first to sense something approaching from deep space. Her not being confirmed is notable, but her absence from this film entirely would feel like a missed opportunity given how the pieces are arranged. One visual detail that tells you a lot about the film's premise. Jim Lee released teaser artwork alongside the title announcement, and the logo combines Superman's classic shield emblem with Brainiac's 3-dot symbol. In the comics, those 3 dots represent the bottled cities Brainiac has collected across the universe, with Kandor being the most famous example. If Gunn is using that iconography deliberately, and there's every reason to think he is, it suggests Metropolis itself could be at risk of being shrunk and preserved like a specimen. It also raises the possibility that the 3 dots aren't just Brainiac's signature, but a sign he's already been watching Earth before the film even opens. That's a rich visual idea that does significant narrative work in a single image. As for the war suit itself, fans have been waiting years to see Lex's power armor executed properly in live action. Not as an Easter egg or a throwaway moment, but as something with actual narrative function. Nicholas Hoult has been putting in serious physical preparation. His trainer Paolo Machidi posted confirmation of recent gym sessions showing Hoult actively building toward a more imposing presence for this role. His DCU journey also continues with a cameo in Peacemaker Season 2 before he and Corenswet meet back on screen in 2027, which means audiences will have a sense of where Lex stands following the events of the first Superman before the sequel picks things up. The Warsuit fundamentally changes what Lex can do in the story. He's not just a scheming genius managing things from a boardroom. He becomes a legitimate physical combatant standing next to Superman against something that makes both of them look small. That reframing is long overdue. Filming of Man of Tomorrow is underway at Trilith Studios in Atlanta, with additional locations in the UK, Cincinnati, and Macon. Cincinnati has been established as the DCU's real-world stand-in for Metropolis, which means expect actual city-scale footage of Brainiac's threat playing out in a recognizable urban environment, something far broader in physical scope than anything the first film attempted. John Murphy and David Fleming are expected to return as composers, which matters more than it might seem. Their score for Superman established a specific emotional language for this universe, and maintaining that continuity into the sequel helps the whole thing feel like a cohesive world rather than a disconnected franchise entry. Man of Tomorrow hits theaters on July 9th, 2027. It's one of 2 DC theatrical releases that year alongside The Batman Part 2 in October. Before it arrives, Supergirl opens in June and Clayface lands in October, meaning audiences will have had 2 full years of consistent DCU content by the time this sequel drops. The first Superman earned over $620 million globally and validated everything Gunn and Peter Safran have been building. Man of Tomorrow comes in with that momentum behind it, and a premise that is genuinely more ambitious in scope. What makes everything here work conceptually is that the threat arrives as a direct consequence of Clark's emergence. A new power appears on Earth, one capable of altering the trajectory of an entire planet, and from a cosmic perspective, that kind of development doesn't go unnoticed. Brainiac arrives because Earth stands out, because Superman stands out. Clark is the reason the threat comes, and he's also the only one capable of stopping it. That's a clean chain of cause and effect that makes the world feel alive and interconnected in the way the best superhero stories do. Lex is smart enough to recognize an extinction-level situation even through his contempt for Superman, and that moment of mutual acknowledgement is where their alliance begins. Not from trust or respect, but from pure necessity. Every agreement between them is fragile. Every shared scene carries the possibility of it all falling apart. The tension is built in from the start, and it doesn't go away. If Gunn pulls this off, Man of Tomorrow won't just be a strong follow-up to Superman. It'll be the film that fundamentally shifts what the DCU is capable of and sets the tone for everything that comes after it.